Introducing aPriori.
Have the skills changed? Like, are the skills that people needed 3 years ago the same as they are today?
I think they have changed, and I think they've changed significantly. Again, back to, I don't need professionals that are capable of doing 3 bids and a buy, running an RFI, down selecting to an RFP, down selecting to an RFQ, and then negotiating an RFQ. Mm-hmm. I need people who are able to do all of that, partner and influence the internal stakeholders, listen to the should cost engineers, partner with the design engineers, with manufacturing, and the supply base, by the way, because they're a very important aspect into this. But I'm looking for more influencers, more business case development, more of that analytics approach. And I mentioned the basic tech processes, and we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but you can hire for, or you can train for basic tech processes. I'm a big fan of having both technical and commercial backgrounds in my organization, especially when you get to PCBs, PCBAs, wiring harness, some of the more EMD, some of the more complex assemblies and et cetera. So I think the skill sets have changed. I believe they're also going to continue to evolve. Again, you're a purchasing person, you're a materials management person, you're going to have to know end to end, including how do I challenge some of the design.
Yeah. So given that, because that's a pretty big change. How do you find those people, or do you train them? Like, how do you put people in those jobs?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So a combination of both is, like I said, on basic tech processes, you can train them up. I'll never forget, I knew a little bit about engines. I'm a farm rural boy from Ontario, Canada. So I knew how to change a push rod engine. I knew how to mess with that stuff. But once it started to get into some of the more complex engines, and I started buying engine components, I immediately enrolled in a 3-day engine teardown class. I took that teardown, and man, maybe I'm one of those people that want to be an engineer, but so I learned from that. Some of the other tactics when I was in the marine industry, and People Mover and Elevator, and I know Coney's here, they actually offered layman's, non-technical training for some of our buying set. What are the most frequent purchase parts that I'm getting for a renovation or a remodel, or for what's breaking down, and educating them from a non-technical person. How do I teach them? Here's the parts you're buying, here's the fit, form, and function, here's how they work, here's how they interact together. So that part of it, I do think you can train. I do think some of this new skill set that's required with end-to-end, doing business continuity, evaluations and reviews, looking at different countries and different political unrest and everything else, that does take a different, right? So I would probably put people in those roles who have had a breadth of experience and a depth of experience, and look for probably more strong technical or kind of P&L ownership, if you will, to put them in some of these more roles, or these higher level, more complex roles.
And I'm going to throw a question at you that we didn't talk about, but just hearing what you're saying now triggered something else where you've got these skills for the job and sort of the economy and what's happening globally, but digitization is something that we're all talking about. To what extent do you require your team to have sort of those technical skills, familiarity with software, using different tools?
Yeah, so again, I steal from other organizations, but I shouldn't use the word steal, but I entice other organizations or people to join. You're right, because it's lesser about buying widgets now, because a lot of the NPIs are based on over-the-air, right, updates. It's more software. So having somebody that can actually do that cost-benefit analysis and/or should cost model, if applicable, having that understanding is ideally having somebody that's been in the field, that's been in there working, and et cetera, because that is a whole new skill set. It's not enhancing, a part that's gonna, pump water out faster, or a compressor. It's gonna get cooler or hotter. It's more about what are the over-the-air, going from touch to voice is a change. And if I'm a buyer buying a touch module versus a voice module, that's a different skill set, right? I mean, it's a different tool. Are you building an ecosystem with an existing provider? Are you starting from scratch? It's that's the evolution, I believe, at least in a lot of these consumer-facing products.
Yeah, and I think as it comes to our arena, I think you're actually requiring some certifications, right, from new organizations like the Society of Product Cost and Engineering and Analytics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So SPCEA, we're looking for certifications from that organization. Obviously, CPSM, IIAPS, International Institute of Applied Purchasing. So yes, certifications in a fleet example, right, is really branching off and getting some different certifications in different areas. Another area would be along from software, and Tristan, I was thinking about you when you presented this, because we're not too far away from, I'm now in the technician space, but we're not too far away from an HVAC technician maybe sitting in your basement or sitting in your attic doing a diagnostics, and if they need a tube, they're going to they'll pull it up on their phone and they'll 3D print it in the back of their van. Or if they need a gear, they're going to be printing it in the back of their van. So understanding a 3D printer, how do I source it, how do I write the materials, I don't think we're too far away from that concept, to be honest.
Interesting. All right, last question. And this is along the theme of the conference, as it, ESG. There are a lot of requirements coming down in terms of ESG requirements and regulations that are, really starting to confront us as we're thinking about carbon impact.
aPriori, making profitability and sustainability a reality for a better world.